Woke up feeling like I just might run for president. Even if there ain't no precedent. Switching up the messaging. I'm about to add a little estrogen. Buy my whip, by myself. Pay my rent, by myself. Only exes that I care about are in my fucking chromosomes.
So hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening. I am Brett McSweeney, president of Eleanor's Legacy. I'm glad you could join us. Since we are here this evening to talk with the filmmakers of Surge, the feature documentary of the epic 2018 elections, and with New York women leaders to talk about their experiences on the campaign trail, we thought we would start with a short trailer for the film, just to set the context for our conversation this evening.
I always tell the story that I never slept on November 8th.
The scene here is so different than a few hours ago.
What started off as impossible is now reality.
But I sure as hell woke up on November 9th.
It might not have been a glass ceiling that shattered, but something exploded.
Powerful men have existed inside what seemed like a perfectly protected bubble.
I am sick and tired of a Congress made up of this old boys club. It's not okay.
We deserve better.
There's a record number of women getting into politics.
Nearly 2/3 are seeking office for the first time.
Seeing a surge of women.
This huge surge of women.
What's behind the surge of women?
There are just so many elected positions in this country where a woman has never served, where a woman of color has never served.
It's the right race, it's the right time, and I'm the right candidate.
I had to run. I had to do it.
Women are now the most important political force in the United States of America.
I know this will be a great conversation because the topic is such a rich one, full of all the power that women's stories bring. And now, as we officially begin the program, for anyone who might have joined us late, I am Brett McSweeney, president of Eleanor's Legacy and the Eleanor's Legacy Action Fund. I want to highlight that if you need ASL language assistance this evening, we are joined by two ASL interpreters, Gloria and Leana. At Eleanor's Legacy, it is important that we begin with a land acknowledgement. I would like to acknowledge that Eleanor's Legacy is situated on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Lenape people. I would also like to acknowledge that you are joining us tonight from many places, near and far, and we acknowledge the traditional caretakers of those lands. And I acknowledge the 34,799 New Yorkers, our neighbors, who have died during the pandemic so far. If you have lost a friend, a family member, or a loved one, our condolences to you, and may we all be well. Today is International Human Rights Day. Today in 1948, under the leadership of, you guessed it, Eleanor Roosevelt, the United Nations adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. That framework for a world in which all people are born free and with dignity, equal in their rights, is a goal we all must recommit ourselves to as we recover and rebuild. And I want to wish you all a happy Hanukkah to everyone who celebrates. So I want to thank everyone also who contributed to Eleanor's Legacy this year. In 2020, Eleanor's Legacy endorsed 82 women candidates across the state, and we celebrated 48 victories once all the ballots were counted. And with your help, Eleanor's Legacy and our special Baker Project initiative elected two new Democratic women to the state Senate, Michelle Hinchy and Samra Brook. And Andrea Stewart-Cousins will lead a 43-member state Senate supermajority. On the Assembly side, women are now almost 50% of the Assembly Democratic Majority Conference, and the majority of those women are women of color. Our state legislature is a dynamic place with energy and drive brought by women from all over the state. There are women who ran and lost this year. Laura Ahern, if you are Zooming with us this evening, I want to thank you for the great race you ran. And I know we are joined tonight by a few of our friends from the legislature, including Alicia Hyman, and from local office, Austining Mayor Victoria Garrity and Southampton Town Trustee Ann Welker, Schenectady County Legislator Michelle Osterlich, and the new Westchester County Democratic Committee Chair, Suzanne Berger, the first woman to chair the Westchester County Democratic Committee. These women in the Senate and the Assembly and in local and county offices across New York State have work to do. There are 10 million women and girls across our state, and we're in a health emergency, a housing crisis, an economic crisis, a jobs crisis, a childcare crisis, an education crisis, and a climate emergency. Fortunately, New York women leaders across sectors are at the forefront of our policy making, our legislating, and our agenda setting. And even more New York women are ready to run in 2021 to join the fight for New York's future. We'll be joined by 2 city council candidates in the conversation tonight, and I believe a few more are listening in, including Tiffany Wimbush and Alexa Aviles. I talk a lot on these Zooms, but of course, Eleanor's legacy has a small, very small village behind the scenes. Our Innovation Council members, including a few who I think are on the Zoom tonight, including Zainara Ahmed, Libby Hutton, Elizabeth Arts, and Julie Jersic, volunteered with women candidates and fundraised for Eleanor's legacy this year. We partnered with allied organizations such as Sarah Berliner and Vote Like a Mother to build community. And of course, our board of directors pulled together like never before, including a few who are listening in tonight, like Lynn Mahoney and Tracy Brooks. And I want to thank Melanie McAvoy, Kaylee Scott, and Robin Brown for helping me learn Zoom, and always keeping our mission to build a new generation of New York women leaders front and center in all the work that we've done in this year 2020. So let's get this conversation started. Please join me in welcoming Donna Zaccaro, Chair of the Eleanor's Legacy Board of Directors. Donna, welcome to the Zoom.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Brett, and for having me participate in this panel tonight, which we are so excited about. I'm so excited about. First of all, I love the film, and I think it's such an important film, certainly for anyone who's running for office to see, but I also think it's great for any voter, potential voter. Actually, everyone should see it because you want to see what candidates have to go through. And in addition to, well, we'll talk about all sorts of stuff with respect to the film, but I will first introduce the filmmakers who we're so fortunate to have with us tonight, Hannah Rosenzweig and Wendy Sachs. Hannah is a documentary film director and longtime producer. She's founder and president of Intention Media, Inc. And since serving as Hillary Clinton's personal videographer for her 2008 presidential campaign, Hannah's worked as a producer and advisor for women candidates and elected officials. Hannah's the co-director and producer of the terrific documentary, as I mentioned, Surge, which hopefully everyone participating today has had a chance to watch. Or will watch afterwards. And Wendy is a documentary film director as well. She was Hannah's partner in crime here. And she's an Emmy Award-winning network news television producer, my alma mater of NBC, but also CNN and Fox. She's a writer, author, a sought-after speaker on women's issues. She's also a former Capitol Hill press secretary, media relations executive, and the author of 2 critically acclaimed books about women and careers. So as I mentioned, Wendy is Hannah's partner on Surge, serving as co-director and producer for the great film. And we're fortunate to have both of them. I'm gonna then introduce just quickly, and both of them have much longer, everyone here has much longer resumes and we cut it down. So there's lots more there and you can look on their websites. But I wanna tell you about April Baskin, who is the elected official on the panel tonight. She chairs the Erie County Legislature. In fact, she's the youngest person to do so. First elected to the legislature in 2017, April was quickly nominated by her colleagues to serve as majority leader. So welcome, April. And she's up for re-election. And then Tricia Shimamura is an activist and social worker, currently the 2nd vice chair of Manhattan's Community Board 8. She previously served as Deputy Chief of Staff to Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney, and she herself is now a candidate for City Council on Manhattan's Upper East Side and Roosevelt Island. So welcome, Tricia. And then Amoy Barnes was born in Jamaica, but grew up on Staten Island and has extensive experience serving at the local, state, and federal level. She's a former director of constituent services in the state senate, a community outreach coordinator in the city parks department, and a borough director in the mayor's office. So Amoy is herself now a candidate for city council as well to represent Staten Island's North Shore. So welcome to you all. What a great panel we have. and are very fortunate to have on this first night of Hanukkah and beginning of the holiday season. And I have the good fortune of being able to ask some questions of everybody. So I am going to start actually with the filmmakers and then get to our candidates and electeds, because we are here tonight since we all hopefully watched Surge. And so let me again say bravo and congratulations on the film. As someone who worked, well, I'm a documentary filmmaker as well, but also I worked on all my mother's political campaigns, starting when she was a first-time candidate running for Congress in a district that was more conservative than she was, the first woman to run for that seat, the first facing, she won a Democratic primary against 2 male candidates. So, and then, they were electeds in the party's picks. And then she challenged a 34-year incumbent, who she then beat. So her story was so much like those depicted in the film, the same sort of races where they were real long shots and they weren't known and they were first-time candidates. And their campaigns and how they campaign rang so true to me and so accurate to my experience, and I'm talking about, not to disclose age, but it was 42 years ago. So what I want to know is how the film came about, what was its impetus, and how you picked these women to follow.
Well, first of all, Donna, thank you so much. And I hope everybody noticed that there's a clip of your mom in the opening, as in our women's history section. She was so important to us to put her in there. Oh, I see the baby.
Yes. Great.
Thank you so much for having us tonight. We're so excited to be here with all of you and the candidates and Ms. Baskin, the elected official. So Surge really came about. I'll just tell part of it and then I'll kick it over to Wendy to tell the rest. Surge came about right after the first Women's March in 2017, when we were noticing that, not only did women march, but there were all these women that were deciding to run for office. So, right after the march, everyone was like, oh, well, what are they just marched, but what are they going to do afterwards? And we were seeing that actually that grassroots activism was continuing in this really exciting way. And one way it was manifesting was all these women running for office and these first-time women running for office. So we decided that that's a fantastic story and it has to be a documentary. So Wendy and I joined forces also with our original we were originally a trio with a woman named Tanya Selvaratnam, who's our executive producer. And we decided we're going to make a film, and we started looking for candidates. We were really interested in regular women that cared so much about what was going on in our country and in their community that they were willing to drop everything they were doing and run for office. Kind of not the political story we hear often, the wealthy or the famous candidate, but really because there's so many candidates and elected officials all over the country. We have some here tonight that are, in politics for the right reason. So we really wanted to highlight that. So I'll pass it over to Wendy to continue sharing on how we landed on our 3 candidates.
Thank you also for inviting us here tonight. This is so great. And I remember your mom when she was nominated as VP. I am old enough to really have been alive in remembering that moment. And I will tell you, it was very inspiring. I was, I guess, 9 years old in 1984. So no, I'm sorry. I was older than that. I was 13. I was like a real person. I think I probably just had my bat mitzvah. So it's really amazing. So we were looking to follow a diverse group of women, women who didn't represent the coasts, right? We wanted women in middle America, women who were really representing America. And all of the women who we chose were running to flip their red districts to blue. That was very important to us. And it was a real differentiator because there were some other films that were in production at the time, many actually at one point. And we were really steadfast on making sure our women were all looking to flip their districts from red to blue. They were all running for the very first time, and they were a diverse group of women, geographically, racially, and age-wise. One of our candidates is in her 30s, Lauren Underwood. One's in her 40s, one's in her 50s. So that was really important to us also. And as Hannah pointed out, we wanted to tell real, authentic stories. These were not legacy candidates. They were not women who had big fat checkbooks and could write those big fat checks. They were women who were starting out running very scrappy campaigns, really determined, very passionate, and who represented even different parts of the Democratic Party. So we wanted to have a diverse group of women who truly reflected the surge.
They are all really likable, and they are all really good candidates. They all worked really hard, and they were really good natural campaigners. I mean, I would say each one of them in watching them in the film. Did you start off with a bigger group and narrow it down to these three, or how did you? I hear the criteria you picked, but there were so many women running all over the place that to find three, and then spoiler alert, the three of them won their primaries. They weren't all ultimately successful, but the fact that the three that you chose won their primaries is actually pretty amazing because they were all such long shots.
Yeah. We definitely were looking for that. We were looking for, in the beginning, we were following more. And we knew we wanted to go through to the general election, right? November 2018. So when we were starting out in 2017 and late 2017, and then even in early 2018, the candidates needed to be strong enough that they were building strong campaigns that it looked like they might win their primaries. So that was definitely a criteria. And, we filmed with a bunch of other women, and they just didn't kind of pop on camera the right way, or, it also, since they weren't as comfortable on camera, we wanted people that felt that they could share their story, and that, that there was going to be also a bond between us, because we were following them the entire campaign. And so that there was not a bond, but a connection. And so
did you actually spend with them? I mean, you kind of popped in at different points during the campaign, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. How did it work? Wendy, do you want to share?
Sure. Yeah. And just to go back to, the casting, I also like to point out, we didn't start out thinking it was going to be a film about just Democratic women running for office. In fact, our very first shoot was at the Yale Campaign School for Women, which is a bipartisan campaign boot camp training ground. And we were vetting women. We were vetting these potential candidates. We were talking to women, Republican women who are running for office. Ultimately, those women didn't really seem to have viable campaigns. And as we continued trying to cast for more Republican women who also fit our criteria, we realized it was a blue surge. It was a blue wave of women running. And that was going to be the story of 2018. But we were reaching out to candidates around the country, like Alyssa Slotkin, I was trying to book. Mikey Sherrill, we shot with. Hannah was down in Florida filming with another woman. And another woman I was shooting with in New Jersey, she didn't make it through her primary. So we were definitely casting a wide net, and we needed to make sure that these campaigns were viable. But yeah, it's like you're betting on a horse. You're not really sure what's going to happen. We were hoping there's going to be some viability. We're hoping we're going to get to the finish line. We're definitely nervous about that. We're looking at the numbers. We're looking at the polls. We're looking at how much money these women are raising. And that's all, part of the casting for this. And then we dropped in our characters at all different moments. It was a very ambitious project, and our women were not anywhere in driving distance, which is why I live in New Jersey. So we were filming in New Jersey at the beginning thinking, well, this is going to make more sense. It's much more practical. But again, we didn't want to film really coastal candidates. So we dropped in as often as we could. We also, had a really scrappy budget. And so we would do things like FaceTime interviews and have our camera woman in the field be shooting the interviews while we're actually directing the interviews. So we did all sorts of ways to be able to put this together on a really sort of slim budget, but be there as much as possible. I mean, it's sort of amazing the stories that evolved from actually the filming of this, because it was challenging since we don't live in Texas, Indiana, or Illinois.
Right. Hey, I think, I think I'd like to bring in the candidates and electeds at this point, and then we'll come back more to the film. But actually, the segue is, though none of the three of you are running for Congress yet, and presumably running for county legislature or city council is different from a congressional run. I still want to ask each of you to talk about your campaign experiences by comparison to what you saw in the film. So why don't we start? Well, Amoy's on my screen first, so I'll look at maybe Amoy, you can start off.
Hi everyone.
How your campaigning experience is like what you saw in the film, or not?
Thank you, Donna, and thank you so much to Eleanor's Legacy, Kylie, Brad, and to the filmmakers of Surge, and of course my fellow candidate Tricia Shimamura and Honorable April Baskin. So one of the first things, I started watching it, and honestly, I cried. I can't believe, I started getting very, very emotional because, running for office is a lot. It's a lot, and this documentary definitely highlighted that. I think that when you're going through the process as a candidate, you're kind of like in this go mode, and so you don't really take that much time to think about how much of a strain it takes on you personally, on your family, on your relationships. One of the first, in the early beginnings of the documentary, and spoiler alert, Lauren Underwood says that, the campaign is my life. I've missed birthday parties, I've missed anniversaries, I've missed, and I think that was the part of it that got me emotional, because then I realized that yesterday was my my stepdad's birthday, and I completely forgot to wish him happy birthday. I was so and my mother texted me and she said, don't forget to wish, Warren happy birthday. And I'm like, okay, I got to do that. And then somehow the next day came and I'm like, oh my God. My mother has literally had to come by and visit me and be like, is everything okay? I texted you 4 days ago. It takes a lot on you. And I appreciate this perspective that that you guys brought to the table, because I think it's important for people to see that, anybody, but particularly women running for office, it's not easy. It's not easy. And there's a lot of sacrifices that are made. Women give up their jobs and stop working. And there was a talk of the financial sacrifices, so, Tricia is a mother and she could talk about those sacrifices. And, Honorable April Baskin, she's in that role. She could talk about those sacrifices. There's a lot of sacrifices. And that was the emotional tone that it sort of that's when I kind of oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm doing this.
Well, since Amoy mentioned you're being a mom too, Tricia, you want to talk about how the film spoke to you or reflected your experience?
Well, I absolutely, and thank you, Amoy, so much. I echo so much of what Amoy says about it being a very intense and somewhat isolating experience, but I feel lucky to count Amoy as a friend of mine from another borough. But I think that candidates feel drawn to one another because it is such a intense experience. And so to find another friend and to see another woman particularly just killing it in her community, it is a very kind of special friendship. Yeah, certainly. I'm a Japanese Puerto Rican woman running in a district that has never elected a person of color before, not on the city, state, or federal level. I'm running in a state that has never elected a Japanese American before, ever. And I'm running as a mom. You saw my son's forehead in the screen for a second there because my husband had to use the restroom, and he's 17 months old. And if somebody doesn't watch him, you're surely going to hear a crash behind us. And so I definitely saw a lot of similarities in Liz, particularly, who was running with her family. And just to build off of what Amoy said, a big piece of this is not only believing in yourself and knowing that you have a perspective and you have a purpose and believing in your drive, but it's also believing that it's worth putting all of your other relationships on hold, including your families. And certainly that's definitely difficult. What I normally tell people, though, is that there's a reason why we only have, I believe, one mother with school-age children on our city council right now. And there's a reason why we've never elected a Japanese American. And it's really because the systems that are in place are designed to allow for some to be at the decision-making table and others not to be, particularly women and particularly women of color and mothers. So I feel a real responsibility to run my race and be a strong advocate for the families and working families and women of color and all the moms out there. If you're a single mom, I have no idea how you're doing it in this moment. I mean, just period. I don't know how any single mother is doing it right now at all. And so as long as I do have a supportive partner, and as long as I do have a supportive team behind me, I felt very much inspired by what Serge was talking about and showing these women who have some sort of special drive in them that were really pushing them towards this goal. In particular, I think when I think it was Wendy or Hannah or both of you who said scrappy, that is a word that I love because that's how I feel as a first-time candidate and a young mother. And I also love how you described your own work as starting out kind of scrappy and these candidates being a little scrappy. I think that women in general are extremely innovative and resilient when it comes to when they see that a job needs to get done. So I just applaud so much the filmmakers, and I applaud the film and the women who are running in it, because it really was kind of scrappy inspiration. And like I said at the beginning, and how much I love Amoy and seeing what she's doing, I'm always really excited to see other women killing it in their fields, because it just kind of feels then like I found a soul sister somewhere.
And then April, do you want to talk about your experience too? And how these these candidates campaign, and how you campaigned, and is it similar?
Yes, very much so. It hit home. I think 10 minutes into the film, like Amoy, I was touched by Miss Underwood. She did speak to missing very important events, but at some point around that same area, she said, nobody invited us to this table. And then she said again, nobody. And for some reason, when she said it, it just really, really caused me to like really sit up and be alert and really reflect. It was nostalgic. It was raw. You could feel the cold air on these women as they were carrying their clipboards and knocking doors. And it just took me back to 2017 when I was a first-time candidate. So in the county legislature, our seats are only 2-year seats. So every other year, your second year of your term, you're running for office again. Petitions hit the street this February, and I'm going into my 3rd re-election. But I've only been an elected official for, a little over 3 years. And so I'm not too far removed from the experience. In 2017, I had only my daughter. At the time, I was a single mother. I was on social services. I was the only female in a race for an open seat against 4 males. One male was a longtime career politician. Another male was a peer of mine that actually went to the same high school as me, but had a political science degree and served in the military and had the good look and the family. And then there was an attorney. And then there was me, like a graduate school student, a single mother on welfare. But I just strongly, strongly believed that the people who believed in me really saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And because they believed so much in me, I just kind of risked it all, just like all of the amazing women in the film did. It was absolutely remarkable. And so when Miss Underwood said, you know, nobody invited us to this table, nobody, it hit home, because sometimes when you have amazing groups like Eleanor's Legacy, your local PAC, sometimes your local party, if you're running as the endorsed candidate, you're surrounded by a lot of people who are supporting you, who are rooting for you, who are raising money for you, who are knocking doors with you, who are babysitting your kids, and you assume that you're invited. Like that to me, for some reason, it translated as I had an invitation. And after I got elected and got to the party, I quickly realized I was dressed and spent like the entire summer getting dressed for a party that I was not invited to. And a lot of people didn't want me there. And at that point, I had to either decide, was all the work that I put into getting dressed and ready for this party to represent my community, to represent single mothers, to represent women of color, was I just gonna pick up and go home because nobody wanted me there? Or was I gonna pull up a chair and just, you know, eat and take to-go plates with me when I left for everybody that I represent, make sure that everybody's going to eat. So, you know, the film was raw, it was hard. And then as was mentioned in the opening, I immediately plummeted to a leadership role because of my tenacity and my eagerness and being unique. And so I didn't even have time to learn how to be a legislator. It was like they said that girl should be our majority leader. And then not even a year and a half later, chair of the legislature was promoted to city court judge, and as the majority leader, I moved up to serve. So, and then you're running every other year. Like I'm still constantly just a couple months away from knocking doors. And, you know, this year, being in county government, you're charged with public health responsibilities. I had a baby, so Tricia, I understand, just this past June during COVID. So now this is my first re-election with a newborn. Like I have a 5-month-old.
My God.
And yeah, I have a very supportive family. His father's extremely, extremely supportive. And so, like you said, Trish, I remember what it was like doing it just alone as a single mother. And how do they do it? We just do it. Like you don't have a choice. You just put your kid on your hip and you go to work and you fight. But this year is going to be super, super different. There's still COVID. I don't know how many signatures we need. I don't know how much money to raise. I got this new baby. I got the first baby. And then, you know, there's this responsibility of still being not just the chair of the body, but also a representative of the poorest district in Erie County. It was all too real. The film was all too much of a flashback and all too much of a reality about what I'm about to have to do again with all of these other things. But one thing that I know about women is that's what we do. We govern differently for a reason, and we juggle many, many things because we were created to do that. So the film was amazing. It was nostalgic. It was raw. It was real. And I'm just so grateful to the filmmakers. I have a degree in film, and so in theater, and that led me into that led me into public service. But I just felt so touched by the film, and it was great. I want to shout out to not just the panelists and the wonderful leaders of Eleanor's Legacy, Brett, who since we met back in 2019 at the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus, you've been such a rock and a background supporter of me and my career. But also Assembly Member Hyman, who you guys said was on the call as well. She's a new friend of mine, and just I just want to like wrap up by saying like thank you, because sometimes we need to end days like this surrounded by strong women who know the struggle, who were the children of congresswomen who worked on campaigns, you know what I'm saying, 30, 40 years ago to pave ways for people like us. So just thank you to everybody that's even here tonight.
My guess is that the three women in the film, the three candidates in the film, I think they were great candidates, and I believe they outworked everybody. And my guess is that the three of you are cut from the same cloth. I mean, what you just described, but also what each of you is describing. You're not just balancing your home life and everything else that's going on in your life. In order to be successful, you need to outwork everybody else. Now, whether that's, you know, a commonality among women or just what successful candidates need to do. I mean, I think what we saw in the film too, that I think is reflected in your experiences and was reflected in my experience with my mother. I mean, it's the same. You kind of, if you want to win, you do have to outwork everybody else. I mean, we saw Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. I mean, she outworked, you know, a senior guy, and it's the retail politicking, it's the personal touch, it's the personal experience, it's the door knocking, it's the phone calls. So you really, Hannah, and you both, you really did a great job of capturing what you have to do to be a successful candidate and elected.
I always call it out organizing. You know, one of the things I always say, I'm going to out organize everybody because that's what it is. It comes down to just being a good grassroots organizer and getting people to help you do the work. Because as they showed in the film, and thank you for showing that, you showed the story of how when Lauren and the other candidates decided to run, it was just them and maybe like one other person. And then by the end of it, it's them and many other people. I mean, that's what it is. It's organizing. It's getting people to help you do the work because you can't do it alone.
Well, that tees up what I was going to ask next, because Wendy and Hannah asked the question in the film, whether it's a moment or a movement. And I think my impression is that you do a pretty good job of actually answering that. So I would just throw that out to the candidates and elected honorable. You know, do you feel part of a movement, or do you feel that this is a moment?
I just want to actually, my response to that is actually highlighting I think the most moving part of the film for me, which was when you asked Liz's daughter what she thought of her mom running for office, and she said at first, I would be so scared, or I've never been that brave before, and then at the end she says, well, I want to win, and I just thought, like, that's a girl who's gonna follow her mother, and that's somebody who's gonna follow in her mother's footsteps. And I think about that a lot because we are still unfortunately talking about firsts, even in New York. And I think that that this is not a moment, because every single little girl and every single sister and cousin and young person or other mom or single mom or college graduate or retail worker is going to see women running. And Amoy, you and I are both 21 and 21 candidates, but how many of us are there? There are over, I think, 200 women running for office right now. And so it's just in New York City, just for city council. So I feel like that little girl talking about at first being scared and then saying, no, I want to win. That shows right there that this is a movement. And I'm honored to play a small role in that, but certainly I think that we'll see more women. I hope I swear that I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that we see more women running for office.
That's really well said. I want to piggyback off of that because there are days where I'm unclear if this is a season of life and where I'm a servant unto my people and to upward mobility for oppressed communities and to make sure that people who look like me have opportunities. But then I look at my daughter and I listen to certain things that she says, like, how many signatures do you need, Mom? Or she'll hear somebody's running for office and she'll say one time somebody was running locally and she said, I wonder how much they spent on those lawn signs. So I am clear that this is bigger than me, that she is getting it. She understands the work and the critical thinking that goes into running a successful campaign. And that's not going to ever be in vain. That is to create a path forward for more women to have an opportunity to have their voice heard and to have, you know, equitable representation of what our country and what our communities look like. So definitely it is my daughter that reminds me this is not just about me or something that I'm doing right now in life, a part of my history or my personal legacy. This is a movement that is going to outlive me, and every single thing that I do every single day, she's watching, she's picking it up, and she's going to execute that. Like, there are going to be consequences to whatever I show her. And my hope is that I'm constantly showing her good, because that's what I want for her to give to our community.
You know, it was the question that we asked everyone throughout the film, is this a moment or a movement? And that was for 2018. And then what 2020 really showed us was that, in fact, it was a movement. There are more women who ran and won in 2020 than ran and won in 2018. So I'm eager to see what's going to be happening in 2021 and 2022. One of my personally favorite lines in the film, and I have many, but one is with Rebecca Traister, who sort of acts a bit of as our narrator at the beginning and in the end. And she says that once after you pull that lever for a non-white, non-male candidate, it gets easier each time. And I think that is so important and so powerful because, and I think it's the truth, right? So all of you ladies, I know we still have firsts among you, but you're not going to be the first, you're not going to be the last, right? And you running for office, you representing your communities, and it's so incredibly powerful and so inspirational, and it's transformative. And that's what we saw in 2018. And that's what Hannah and I really wanted to reflect in this film. For us, the legacy of the film is that this has legs and this lives on. And it wasn't just, for us, the film isn't just to be seen right now at this moment, but moving forward to inspire generations of young women and girls and women, you know, who are older, who might be able to look at themselves or look at someone like Jelen Sanchez in her early 50s, who had no political experience, and was running in Waxahachie, Texas, you know, coming from a very modest background, and was able to say, I can do this. I have to do this. And, you know, it's really important to us.
Every time a little girl or whatever it is, whether it's whatever the form of difference is, sees someone that looks like them run for office, it tells them that they can do it too. It also actually, I think, inspires them to do to think that they can do other things too, not just whether it's run for office or not. And I think that having Kamala Harris as our vice president is so huge in terms of the perception of what people think is possible. But, you know, certainly you captured in Jana, as well as Lauren and Liz, just this sense of, well, I need to do this and I can do this. And that's because of the women who ran before them. And so the three of you are doing that for everybody that follows you, and certainly obviously your children, but everyone that's watching what you're doing. And again, I just appreciate Wendy and Hannah bringing these other women's stories so that people see what it takes what you have to do to run and be a candidate, but also that you can do it. So, and I see Brett has come back on, so I think she's going to start wrapping up. But
I've been here.
I just want to ask the filmmakers to tell everybody, where I know this was broadcast on Showtime, I believe it's still streaming on Showtime. Tell everybody where they can see it, where they can tell people to see it, and what you're doing with the film.
Okay, great. Yeah, we had our premiere on Showtime on September 8th, and it's still streaming on Showtime, and actually it's still airing. It's still airing occasionally if you have the Showtime channel. It's also now on Amazon. So many people don't have Showtime, but I encourage you, if you haven't seen the film or you loved it, you can tell your friends and family to go and watch it on Amazon. And we had an amazing fall of many events like this, and virtually, but all over the country, just sharing with people the film and talking to candidates in states. We did events in Texas, we did events in Indiana, and events with Lauren in Illinois. And we're looking forward, like as Wendy mentioned, into 2021. We're so excited to use the film to support and reflect on the candidates for City Council in 2021, and Honorable Baskin's race as well, and all the many other ones. And then going forward to 2022, I think that the film is really evergreen and will be for a long, long time, and we hope to use it that way. So
it also ends up in schools.
Yes, I was going to mention we're also just about to be distributed educationally. That's what we're working on right now as well.
Terrific. Congratulations.
Thanks, Donna.
I'll throw it to Brett.
So yes, to echo Hannah, thank you, Donna, and thank you, Hannah and Wendy. I have to say, the privilege of my job is to get to travel New York State, to get to travel the 5 boroughs, and to get to meet women like Tricia and Amoy and April, and to know their stories. And I feel like I carry them with me. But your film, I feel, provided a window into the amazing talent that is out there that I know exists, and that I spend forever asking my colleagues, how do we tell the stories? How do we get women and people to know that there is hope out there? And even makes me emotional, as you can see, but I'm Irish, and so chalk it up to that. So thank you, Hannah and Wendy, for so accurately capturing the power of women. And thank you, April and Tricia and Amoy, for running and continuing to run, and for running for re-election, and for running for leadership, April, as soon as you arrive to the legislature. And thank you for bringing to-go bags with you when you arrive to the party on behalf of your constituents in the legislative district in Buffalo. I can't say it enough. To be honest, running looks hard. But what I enjoy about Eleanor's legacy is the multiplier effect, that the work that we do with our small village allows us to endorse 82 women in 1 year and elect 48. And 2021 is upon us, and it'll be followed by 2022. And the work doesn't end. I say it'll end when there'll be 151 assembly members with Alicia in the assembly, and 150 assembly women in the assembly with Alicia, and 63 women in the Senate. So we have a little bit more work to do. But good luck to you this year in 2021, to April and Tricia and Amoy. And we've learned about the power of storytelling this evening. We've talked about it so much, and we've talked about what it means to be surrounded by New York women like Donna's mom and like Donna herself, who have paved these roads that so many of us are walking on now. And I wanted to take a moment to introduce you all to one more powerful New York woman, who will be joining us in just a minute. At the New York City Municipal Archives, WomensActivism.NYC is a crowdsourced digital archive spearheaded by the Municipal Archives to celebrate the 100th anniversary of women gaining the right to vote in the United States, some women. And the archives are inviting all New Yorkers to help build a powerful tapestry of women activists, change makers, public servants, and everyday extraordinary women who move and inspire you, just as Wendy and Hannah captured the moving and inspiring candidates in their film. Women whose stories you want the world to know, just like I want you all to know the stories of women candidates across New York State, and the women who deserve to be recognized for their contributions within their families and communities. So I would like to introduce to you a woman who can tell us a bit more about this project and a bit more about how you can be involved in telling women's stories. Please join me in welcoming Spirit Tawfiq.
Thank you so much, Brett. Thank you, Kaylee. Thank you, everyone from Eleanor's Legacy. It's such an honor to be among you. I literally, from the moment I stepped in the Zoom room, I'm like, this is absolutely beautiful. And your stories are so empowering and inspirational. I feel so lifted, and I feel very honored just to be in this space, a very sacred space. So thank you so much for the invitation. I feel as though it's just so well aligned, the Women's Activism NYC project, which, as Brett described, is a crowdsourced digital archive featuring women changemakers, activists, and everyday extraordinary women who are making an impact and inspiring within their home, within their communities, the state, nation, and the globe. So in essence, the project is spearheaded by Department of Records and Information Services, the Municipal Archives, and it was launched about 5 years ago to commemorate the women's suffrage centennial. So there were many events leading up to 2020, the actual anniversary, but here we are, like at the end of the commemorative events, and we had a task to collect 20,000 stories by 2020 of women who I described. And we're excited because we were able to collect at this point about 8,000 stories, which is amazing when you think about just the vastness of the narrative that we're able to bring to this archive. And so I think it's a really awesome opportunity to contribute to the archive, and I'm inviting you and welcoming you to think about the women in your life, but also your stories need to be on the archive. So it's kind of like a one-stop shop where anyone from around the globe can go on to this digital archive and write about someone who has had an impact on their life. And then that story will then live in perpetuity in the archive. So we're literally, as I describe it, writing women into history and expanding the narrative, centering voices and experiences and lives that have traditionally been marginalized and threatened to be erased. And so it's like a really powerful experience. As I'm listening to you amazing women speak, I'm thinking about just the intergenerational power that you are setting in motion. And it just reminded me of the power of the archive, just in listening, of when someone goes onto the archive and finds a woman whose story inspires them, they find about a career path they didn't know what was possible. They think about all of the challenges that women face. You know, one of my interns said, oftentimes we usually, especially in this time, we see the highlight reel of everyone's lives. And so being able to dive into the archive allows an opportunity to get a real authentic glimpse into a woman's life, their struggle, their triumphs, their victories. And so I just thank you very much, Brett, and everyone at Eleanor's Legacy, just to introduce this project to you. Although the project is nearing the end, because we are coming to the end of 2020, it will still exist. And so you can still submit to the archive, and we highly welcome and encourage that. But it will shift a little bit in scope, but I just want to let you know that it's still open. And we have a campaign going on right now called Gift a Story, where you can write a story, submit the woman's name who you're writing about, and we'll send you a certificate to then present to her by saying that you have written her legacy into history. So thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you for all of the powerful work that you are doing. I'm super humbled to be in this Zoom room, and I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Spirit, for joining us in this Zoom room. And thank you for everyone, from Wendy and Hannah, the filmmakers, to April and Tricia and Amoy, our women leaders on the campaign trail. And thank you, Donna, for for this commitment that you made, I believe, when you probably stood, I know you stood at subway stops for your mom, and now you show up in Zoom rooms for New York women every time we ask. So thank you for your leadership. And for everyone who is in this Zoom room, we've come a long way together. The film brought me right back to November 8th, 2016, and the first few minutes were a little bit hard to watch, I have to tell you. But seeing the commitment for the three candidates and knowing that April and Tricia and Amoy and dozens of women just like them are up and running across New York State every election cycle is the dose of cheer that I need to keep going. 2021 will be the 20th anniversary of Eleanor's legacy, if you can believe it, founded by Judith Hope in 2001 with a vision to build a new generation of New York women leaders. We're on our way, but we're not there yet. There's work to do. If you would make a year-end contribution to Eleanor's legacy, we would greatly appreciate it. That'll keep us going and able to invest in women for the next 20 years until, like I said, there's 150 women in the New York State Assembly and 63 senators. Until then, we'll keep up the mission of building a new generation of New York women. And I wish you all a happy and healthy 2021. I thank you all who've taken the time to join us in 2020 in these Zoom rooms. And I thank the women candidates who are running under conditions they certainly did not anticipate, but seem to have only inspired them to run harder and faster to join the fight for New York's future. So I wish you all well. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you all in 2021.